We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency.
Congressman Dan Goldman just dropped a political bombshell, issuing a subpoena that could finally expose what's really hidden inside the Trump-Epstein files. For months, Americans were promised transparency, but instead, there's been silence until now.
And here we are again, La La Land and Homeland Security Committee, conducting oversight of the president and his administration. Great, because there are many, many things that Congress should be conducting oversight over this administration. Donald Trump campaigned on finding convicted criminals who are unlawfully here in this country and deporting them. The worst of the worst, he said. Instead, he and his unidentified masked secret ICE agents are snatching and arresting immigrants from court proceedings, nonviolent, non-criminal immigrants pursuing legal pathways to immigrate to this country, and then illegally detaining them in horrific conditions, and even possibly deporting them despite the fact that they are here legally. You would think the committee with jurisdiction over the Department of Homeland Security would want to conduct oversight over the department's refusal to allow members of Congress to observe the conditions of DHS detention facilities. In fact, there is a specific statute that authorizes both Republicans and Democrats to conduct oversight over facilities that house or detain immigrants. But no, the department refuses. So we're here in the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm sure the Republican majority does not like it when this administration undermines its own authority, its own statutory authority, to conduct oversight. But no, instead of all of that, we are here talking yet again about Joe Biden. Newsflash, Joe Biden is not the president. He hasn't been the president for 7 months. So if we are going to conduct oversight here, why are we doing it about the Biden administration when this administration is literally detaining lawful permanent residents and even some U.S. citizens? And it gets worse. It's not just those masked ICE agents. There are many FBI agents who are being called away from their duties to investigate terrorism, violent gangs, child trafficking, and other crimes in order to help ICE arrest and detain immigrants with legal asylum claims, nonviolent. That makes our homeland less safe, not more safe. So we should hear from FBI Director Kash Patel about how many of his criminal investigators are being taken away from their criminal investigatory jobs, keeping Americans safe in order to help round up non-criminal immigrants trying to immigrate the right way. Some of these detainees are being held in Bureau of Prisons detention centers that are unfit for convicted criminals to stay in. We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency. Kash Patel has spent years railing against the FBI to release the files. Many of my Republican colleagues were banging on the table to release the Epstein files. But now, all of a sudden, after a months-long review, Bondi and Patel say nothing to see here, no evidence that any American would want to see about accomplices, co-conspirators, or other people involved. Yesterday, the Republicans voted against releasing the files. So what's changed? Well, we all know Donald Trump has had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on his plane, he hung out in parties, spoke highly of him. And now there are many people saying that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. In fact, there are reporters who say that there are videos of him with topless women. Elon Musk even confirmed that Trump is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Pam Bondi says there's nothing there, but Donald Trump even acknowledges that there is evidence there. It's just not credible. It's made up. This is a Truth Social post from 9:43 this morning. It is an admission that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and the American people deserve to know whether he is or not.
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman, I would, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11...
Gentleman is not recognized. Your time has expired.
I have a motion,
Mr. Garbarino.
Mr. Chairman.
What we just witnessed from Representative Dan Goldman wasn't just another heated committee exchange. It was a revealing moment that laid bare something much deeper about the tension between power, accountability, and truth in Washington today. Goldman's frustration wasn't merely about politics. It was about transparency, or more precisely, the lack of it. And when he invoked the name Pam Bondi and tied it to the alleged Trump-Epstein files, the stakes of this entire conversation shifted dramatically. To understand why this moment matters, you have to step back and look at what's happening beneath the surface. For months, the Trump administration and Attorney General Pam Bondi have been accused of blocking the release of information related to Jeffrey Epstein, one of the most infamous names associated with sex trafficking, power, and corruption. When Bondi took office, she promised transparency, justice, and a commitment to the rule of law. But what Dan Goldman is suggesting here is that those promises have been replaced by silence, stonewalling, and political loyalty. Goldman's tone throughout his remarks wasn't performative. It was the frustration of a lawmaker watching the very system designed to deliver justice get entangled in partisan protection. His comments about ICE and the FBI being redirected from their original missions, from fighting terrorism and violent crime to rounding up non-criminal immigrants, was more than a policy critique. It was a warning about institutional drift. He was painting a picture of federal power being repurposed not for safety, not for justice, but for political theater and intimidation. And then came the pivot, the part that pulled everyone's attention to something far darker, the Epstein files. This isn't a new controversy, but Goldman's decision to bring it up in this setting, in the context of oversight and accountability, was significant. The Epstein case represents a wound in the American psyche, a story about how the powerful protect one another, how justice bends for influence, and how money can buy silence. When Goldman pointed out that both Trump and Bondi had at one time promised to release those files and have since gone silent, he was doing more than scoring political points. He was raising a fundamental question: what are they hiding, and why? Let's break that down further. Bondi claimed months ago that the Epstein files were sitting on her desk. She promised to release them in the name of transparency. Yet, no files have been made public. Goldman's comments suggest that even within Congress, requests for those documents are being ignored. The refusal to comply with subpoenas, to hand over information, or even to answer questions about those files points to something much larger, a deliberate shielding of individuals or information that could be politically or personally damaging. And when you combine that with Goldman's reminder that Donald Trump once socialized with Jeffrey Epstein, attended his parties, appeared alongside him in photos, and once even described him as a terrific guy, it becomes impossible not to question whether the silence from the administration is about protecting the public or protecting themselves. But what makes Goldman's questioning even more compelling is the context of his role. As a former federal prosecutor, he understands the weight of evidence, the meaning of transparency, and the consequences of obstruction. His subpoena to Pam Bondi isn't just a procedural formality, it's a direct challenge to the wall of secrecy that has surrounded this issue. It's a signal that Congress is not going to let this story fade away quietly. And it's worth noting how he connected the Epstein question to the broader issue of government misuse. He wasn't just talking about one case. He was talking about what happens when power becomes insulated, when political loyalty overrides a law, and when agencies that should protect the people start protecting the powerful. His mention of ICE agents operating without oversight, FBI agents being diverted from major investigations, and law enforcement resources being used for political aims all feed into one overarching theme: a government that is slowly losing its moral compass. This is why his remarks carry such weight. They aren't just about Donald Trump or Pam Bondi or even Epstein. They're about the integrity of justice itself, about whether truth in America is still something we can count on or whether it has become a matter of convenience. When Goldman says that the American people deserve to know whether Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, he's really saying that we deserve to know whether our institutions still belong to us or to those who can afford to manipulate them. And that's the real takeaway here. Beyond the headlines and political soundbites, this hearing represents a test of whether our democratic checks and balances still work, a test of whether transparency can survive in an era when secrecy and spin dominate, and a test of whether the truth, even when it's uncomfortable or politically inconvenient, will still matter enough for people in power to pursue it. So as this story unfolds, viewers should pay attention, not just to the subpoenas and soundbites, but to the deeper questions being raised. What is in those files? Why is there so much resistance to releasing them? And what does it say about the state of American justice if answers to those questions never come? Because in the end, this isn't just about Epstein, Bondi, or Trump. It's about the people's right to the truth, and whether our leaders still believe we deserve it. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to stay tuned, because this investigation is only just beginning, and the implications could stretch far beyond what we've seen so far. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. What do you think is being hidden, and why?